Hello, just let me get in front of the camera here. My director Anya is in school today, so we'll be doing without her. I'll have to turn on the camera myself and turn it off myself. Aside from that, what is a director except a gravy train rider who's living off the work of someone else? Today we're going to talk about male muscle anatomy, MMA. Not mixed martial arts, male muscle anatomy. And we're going to have to, we're doing the anatomy of people. We have to do male and female separately for very obvious reasons. I don't think I need to explain that. So let's just focus on the male side of the equation today, and we'll come back to the distaff side, the feminine side, later. And we're just going to break this down into major masses, major shapes. We're not going to try and get into any, Latin or medical terms or anything like that. So let's start with the torso. And when you're laying out a figure, let's say you want a figure jumping through the air. I want a figure who's doing something dynamic. I want him jumping out at the camera. I'm going to start with the torso leading down into the pelvic region, and I'm going to make a center line. And then I'm going to show where the side of it is. See, that's where this arm connects. You always begin with the torso if you're putting a figure into action. What amateur artists tend to do is begin with the head, no matter what they're doing. And it makes sense because if your head doesn't look right, the time you waste on your figure is just wasted. But when you want to put somebody into action and you want them doing something explosive, you have to begin with the torso, and then you might want to go to the legs, then the arms, then the head. Believe me, if you get the body in the right spot, you will find the right spot for that head. So let's just say we're doing an explosive action. We would try and get the shape, the gestures of what we're doing here. And you see how in these early stages, when you're building up your anatomy, what you want is to just get a feel for where it's going. Get that first gesture going, that foot pointed down, the other foot going back. And then once you get an idea what the body is doing, that's when we're going to come back and figure out where the head is. Now, an amateur artist will always put the neck in. You don't always need the neck, because sometimes if the body's leaning forward, then the neck is being blocked by the head. And so that's, in this particular case, we put the head right there. A lot of the neck is not being seen. See? Now, I'm not going to work this up. This is just an example of how to gesture. Maybe I'll work it up just a little. So then if we wanted to improve on this, what we next do is we next start to make these shapes. We next start to look for our markers. Okay, there's a line here, which I'll call the collarbone line. There's another line here, which is for your pec muscles, your chest muscles, and those connect up to your arms. Okay, then there's an upside down U. You gotta watch your center line. In this case, my center line's a little off, so the center line should have been right here. That upside down U should be split by your center line, even if it's turned. That center line still runs up the middle when it turns. It just, you don't see all of it. So then we got that U. This part comes down like that part comes down like a cage. I'm going to do a different figure, so don't think this is the one I'm going to work it up on. I'm just showing you how to go about it here. And then when we get down to the pelvic region, we're going to make this muscle in here, put the package in there, put the hips on the side, come out to here, put the knee, Alright, we got the knee right out here, we got the stuff around the knee. Here's your knee, here's your foot going back into there, that goes up into the leg like that. This muscle doesn't go all the way back. If his leg is up high enough, then we can see a little bit of butt cheek behind it. So the leg is the butt cheek. But we begin to turn these into shapes. So the shape here And I'm just showing you, I'm going to explain this all right after I do it, okay? I'm showing you some of the major shapes here. And you always want to go three-dimensional with this stuff. So that means, let me explain what that means with a different figure. Before we put something into dynamic motion, we first have to understand what we're doing with it. So I was just showing you how to gesture there, but let's understand what we're doing with it completely. Let's make a regular torso here. Regular torso. Basically a wedge. It's very similar to the wedge that's in your hand. It's wider at the top, narrower at the bottom. The more muscular a man is, the more built up he is, the wider it's going to be at the top. Obviously, if the man is overweight, it's going to be wider at the bottom than at the top. So we have to think about the build of the person. Here's your torso. Here's your center line. Now picture an old-fashioned pair of swim trunks. Not a little Speedo, but an old-fashioned, and not big boxers. Picture an old-fashioned pair of swim trunks that's shaped like this, okay? That's your pelvic area. If you're really picturing old-fashioned, you should pretty much have your pelvic area completely covered by those trunks. Now, belly button should be right above there, just so you know how much you're covering up, okay? Belly button should not be covered up by those trunks unless you're on I Dream of Jeannie and you're Barbara Eden and it's the 1960s. Excuse me. So we're going to do this straightforward. I'm just going to gesture for now where these shapes are, then we'll bring them out and make them right. Okay, so we have leg shapes, basically tubes. We'll put the knee in, put the knee area in. Don't continue the top of the leg straight to the bottom of the leg. Make an area for your knee. Because the knee represents a change in direction quite often, and you can't just hook the thigh to the calf without this area in between to adjust the direction. Now, I'll put this leg like that, more or less. And this one is going to come off to this side. And then we're going to have 2 feet down here. This foot is going to be pretty much straight forward, and this foot will be more off to the side. Weird. All of a sudden my dry erase marker is saying scritch, scritch, and making little noises to me. I don't know why. I never did that before. Okay, so here's the front. Before we add the arms, we might want to sort of eyeball where that chest line is, where that U line is for the abs, and way up here is where the collarbone line is. And we see we got a center line coming down like that. We can see already when we start to mark off the collarbone line, the chest line, you know, the rib cage U. The moment we start to mark this stuff off, it starts looking like anatomy. So then, when we're doing this arm, let's make it. Let's do arms that are straight out first. I'm going to make this a tube. I'm not just going to make a tube when I make an arm. I'm going to make a tube that has a ball shape on it, like this. Okay? Phallic jokes aside. It's not just a tube going up to the shoulder. If this is the shoulder up here and we just have a tube going up to the shoulder, we are literally cutting off that critical muscle that helps our arm to rotate and move and go in different places. We can't just have a shoulder like that. We have to show that there's a muscle there. And so there's always a rounded top side. Usually the bottom side, we're not going to see it as rounded, even though it is rounded, because that part will be covered up by the shirt. But we're always going to put a rounded top side on. Now, these arm lengths, you got to eyeball them. Generally speaking, the thigh is the long bone, and the calf bone is another more or less equally long bone. The arm length is not going to be a thigh. It's going to be less. So let's just put these sort of out to the side unrealistically here, and we will work it up as we go. Now, this bottom part, it's just something that you have, the forearm, it's just something that you have to practice. There's no shortcut. but it's not a tube. It's not this. It's tends to be one swoop on the bottom, then on the top it's like that. Okay, and when you turn it in different directions, it's going to look different ways. It can swoop from the top and be like that on the bottom if your arm is reversed. But generally, or if your arm is like this guy's arm, it's more, we're having him hold his arm out more, I don't know if you can see that. Let's say he's holding his hand out like this. Okay, so then there's the middle. When it's held out like that, then it's gonna be, you're gonna put a little, you're not gonna put all the change, when up here all the change is on one side, and then you turn it upside down, all the change is on the other side. When it's held straight out like that, all the change is not gonna be on one side or the other side. It's gonna be more of an idiosyncratic shape that's like this, if you can see that. Okay, now, get some of this out of the way. And let's continue on. It's going to take, this is not going to be a short video. It's probably going to run about a half hour. I have a timer here that I meant to set, and I did not start it. So I'm going to clear that. And I'm going to give myself like 20 minutes. And the reason I'm timing this is because these videos tend to divide at 33.5 minutes. And I don't want this video to divide. I want to have this be a complete video, and then obviously I won't cover everything in it, but we'll get back on this stuff in another complete video. I just don't want them to divide unless I want them to divide. It's me being a control freak, I guess. But, and yeah, I know somebody probably could tell me how to not have it do that, but I don't know how, so all your knowledge is not helping me any. Okay, so let's take this basic shape, and I'm not even going to put the head on it, although I'll just indicate that there's a head up here. Okay. And he's got some eyeballs, and some nose balls, and some mouth balls, and he's just having a good time here today. His ears sticking out like that. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk anatomy now. Let's make this right. We're going to start at the top. When we come from this head, we look for a spot right here. See, we already drew that collarbone line? We're going to look for the spot, the U. There's a U right there, okay? Collarbone comes from back here. It comes from the back side, and it goes, where it goes to is, if you look at this muscle from the top, there's that arm muscle from the top. It goes to right, collarbone curves up and goes right to where that muscle connects. And here's the back. See, this is the back side, and that's the front side. The collarbone curves back around and goes up to where this muscle right here, this curved part, connects. Okay? So let's get these out of here. So once we find that U in the middle, then we're going to go from right under the jaw down to the U. Okay. Now, watch my little faux head here. Okay, I'm going to go from right under the jaw, and I'm going to curve it if I have to curve it, to down to the U. And then the neck isn't shaped like that, is it? No, it's not. Because it's got another muscle that comes in here and goes down and spreads out. We're just finding that first line. After you find that first line going down to the U, then we have to find the second line. The back line goes behind this muscle. So the front lines on the neck come all the way down to the collarbone. The back line on the neck here goes behind the shoulder muscle, and there's a back line on both sides. And in between, this muscle here comes down, and there's like a little connection point there. The muscle comes down, and it's shaped like that, kind of. So this muscle is going to come down here, And we've got basically the front of our neck here. That's the way your neck works. Now your Adam's apple is going to be up in here somewhere, if you're a man. Okay. And yes, there's veins and stuff coming off to the side here. When you're drawing the Hulk, you want to just throw in lots of veins and stuff. Right now we're just drawing an average guy. So, and I even made his shoulder muscle a little bit big for an average guy. Maybe he's an average guy that works out. That's what he'll be. Average guy that works out a lot. Okay. Now, I gotta take some of these lines out so that you can see what I'm doing. Now, going down here, chest, we remember where those lines are. We remember at a U, and we remember we have basically a cross, like a Christian cross here, and then a U on it. So remember that pattern. Now, this line comes from up here. Here's where the muscle is, and that muscle goes behind. Okay, the chest muscle connects to that. So here's the chest muscle, and it goes right up like that. And it comes down here in the front. Okay. Now, getting below the chest muscle here, when you get to this part here, there's like here's your chest muscle. There's like a little circle, and then a little thing. There's a little circle of bone in there, and then there's it divides. So that's at the top of that U. You may not know what I'm talking about, but here's the top of the U. And you get right here, that's where the circle is. We're not going to necessarily draw it in, we just know it's there. And that's where we're going to divide for the center line. Okay. Now, here's the U. We indented it in right underneath, following our center line, right underneath that pec muscle there where it divides. Now we're going to come down and make the first part of the washboard abs here. The first part is going to be, the abs are not, they are not equal like a washboard. They are not. Okay, watch how unequal they are. The first part is going to be up like this. Okay, got a little extra shading there. The second one is going to be mostly a line straight across. It's going to be more or less straight across, and it's going to come up like this on the side. The third one, the belly button is going to be involved here. Okay, the belly button is going to come into play right about there. And this all might be a little high. There is a third line. It's actually below the belly button, and it's probably below the pants line if you're that third part of your ads. If you're wearing a belt, that may well be below your pants. I don't know, it depends on how the pants are hanging these days. Now, when we get, I've got this stuff too high, so I'm going to keep working it down and showing you as I go along. Now we've got the abs in there, but we have to figure out what's wrong here. What was wrong with the torso is it was too narrow. So here's the part right here where the shoulder muscle goes behind the I want to say deltoid muscle, but my mind is blanking out on some of these muscles now. It's silly. Okay, so here's where that shoulder muscle goes behind. Now, if we continue that in an invisible line here, this has to come from back here now. It can't come from the back, can't come from here. Okay, it can't come from where the pecs are. Okay, so now the back has to come from behind there. Okay, and on this side, because he's turned, see, even though I was trying to make him straightforward just in the drawing it, I have turned him a little. And that's fine. I'll just deal with that. I won't try and correct it. I could correct it, but I'm not going to. Okay, so since we've turned him a little, see how this muscle, this large muscle here, this comes from behind the arm, okay? Now when we're going around this abs, before I get into what's up here, let's go all the way down with it. Because underneath this third is a large muscle that goes all the way down to the groin. And we put the groin in there, and at this point I should probably just take those legs off because they're confusing. We put the groin in here somewhere. This muscle comes down, and it's kind of triangular, it's kind of like a pouch. It's split down the middle and it goes down to the groin like that, okay? So, and the belly button is on that same center line right above. Here's the pouch. The belly button's on that same center line right above there, okay? Excuse me. So here's that. Now, this muscle is we got to do the ribs. The ribs come back around here. So we're going to put some ribs around there. Visualize, like, here's the U for the abs. Visualize like another ring around there, and that's where the ribs are going. Then if we take and we get between these lines, we can bring them out and make them more rib shaped like that. Let me show you how that's done. Okay, once we have some rib lines in here, then we can kind of turn them into more rib shape, because the rib shape is more of a idiosyncratic shape like that. So once we are get some rib lines in here, then we connect them and make them it's like a double line of stuff around the rib cage. Get down to here, that stuff ends. That stuff is basically going like this around the rib cage, right? This is the other muscle back here. And there's a muscle that comes up right here on the side. See, you can maybe feel it. If you haven't eaten the amount that I've eaten over the years, you can maybe feel where that muscle is. And then your legs connect way up here, and your butt cheeks are actually behind there. So let's get back up into these arms before we get down into those legs. And see, we have these muscles going around behind the back here. Now, if we want to take that and make it less of a tube, since his arm is turning out, we're going to put the bicep on top. So it makes a curved line going down into the middle, goes down into the middle of this arm. The bicep comes from out. In this position, it would be basically like this. We would see a little bit of the back side of the arm here, and that also goes in. There's a back side to this muscle, but we're not seeing it like this. That can be shown with just a little line connecting there. Your basic muscular arm shape, which I should have gotten into probably first, is it's not like this, okay? If it was like that, it would still be divided down the middle, between the top and the middle. What it is it's like this. Let's make a really big bicep, guys, making a muscle. And there's that shoulder, comes down here into the armpit. This is the armpit. See, this is the armpit right here. And then on the bottom, it's like the peak of the biceps, let's say he's flexing it, is up here. But on the bottom, it's going to come down at sort of an angle. I'm exaggerating this, and basically do that. Let me exaggerate that some more. It's going to come down more like this. The peak is going to be down here. It's going to be offset from this top. And then it's going to come back like that and like that. That's basically the way it's going to happen. And we'll get more into arm construction later. When you look at the front side of the arm, the bicep is doing this. When you look at the back side of the arm, what's going on the back side of the arm is that you've got something that does this. There's a muscle on each side that peaks up here, and then this is the other side of it, and then there's a muscle that comes from in between there, and that's where your that's where your elbow comes from. So anyways, let's get this arm going again up here. And so we got this peaking over here, coming back, and then we got the elbow back in here someplace. But the elbow and that stuff has to be behind this arm. So this arm has, we can divide this arm we can divide this arm right here where the bicep connects, and there's going to be two, like a little peach here. There's going to be two sides to this muscle. It's going to be on either side of where the bicep connects it. And then this is going to come into the wrist. There's a bone there. And we're going to have to do a whole video on arms. I mean, I'm not going to teach you all the ins and outs of arms on this. But just trust me. Trust me when I say that this is how the arm fits together. Let me see if I can show it to you. So, okay, and that's probably exaggerated, but nonetheless. And then your hand would fit right here. It's too big, but you get the idea. Now, connecting down here below, the legs, let's say that we now know that these legs needed to be longer. So the legs, let's just rough that in. The leg should have been here. And this one will be here. Okay, I'm just going to leave those bottoms. And then I want to show you that on the inside here, your basic leg shape is this. Oh, that's 20 minutes. Let me give myself, oh no wait, that's a 5-minute warning. What kind of a timer gives a 5-minute warning? It seems a bit excessive. So, this is your basic leg shape. This muscle connects way up. It connects way up here and swoops down on the outside. On the inside, we're going to start in here and we're going to change direction. It's going to swoop in and down. That's because there's a large muscle right here, basically like that. And that's what causes that on the inside. And this other big muscle connects in here, get down to the knee. Make these legs way too small for him. But when we get down to the knee, then we're going to we have that box there for the knee. So here's where our knee is. Put our knee inside the box. Remember, it's like a badge. We're going to draw the badge shape on one side, and then we're going to show a little bit on the other side. There's like a hood that goes over the top of the badge there, and there's like two little balls on either side of it. But when drawing the knee, it's good to understate everything. So let's draw as little of it as possible. Anyways, let's say there's a knee there. I'm completely bollocksing this up, but I want to get done in a few minutes here, and we'll focus more on the individual things later. We do the center line down from the leg. We do a backwards curved line like that to it, and now we do the other side of that center line like that. It's always good to use that center line to come from the bottom of the knee down to the outside of the leg. And we put our U in. We talked about this with the feet. We put our U in, and then we have our downward part here, a little downward waterfall which goes into the foot shape, the connecting part, heel part. Okay? Now this is all dry erase just on the fly. But you begin to get, and I'm going to actually come back and do, more videos about this stuff. But there's a lot more to it than I can explain in 30 minutes. There's like this muscle, which is a large muscle, it divides on top of the knee. Well, I'm not sure if that muscle divides, but there is a division on top of the knee, so that on top of the knee you actually have two things. I'm exaggerating here. Like that, and I'd say we had it. Let me rush through this and say, pretend we had a knee there, pretended we didn't done all this drawing. On the other side, we come down. I'm not helping anybody doing it that sloppy. But here we have your basic outside shape. All I want to do with this leg is get it down to here, where I could show you that when the foot is facing straight for you, it's going to be something somewhat like this. Just have to, you get a feel for what these foot shapes are after a while, but it's not going to look like a foot when you're looking straight forward. It's going to look more like that. So, I think, I'm going to have to go into a lot more detail on this stuff. I think I'm going to pretty much leave it there. Let's just I shouldn't even get into force or shortening at this point, but let's just say that I have him putting his fist here, and that's a fist. We're just going to pretend that that's a drawn-in fist, okay? And his forearm is therefore coming down like this. And here's his elbow. Let's exaggerate that. Now, to get it in that position, what we would need to do is to foreshorten this arm. I just want to emphasize one critical thing here. When we foreshorten this arm, and actually that's not requiring much foreshortening, so let's put it coming over this way instead. You know what? Shut it. Let's put it, let's just say his hand is here. Okay, and his arm is here. Yay, go team. Okay, so he's got his arm here. Now, if we have this arm and we want to connect this to that, and we only have this tiny amount of space in here, the critical thing to remember is that the width, the distance inside of this, look at this arm over here, the distance from here to there, the width does not change. The width of something does not change. So, when I'm going to look at this other arm, and I'm going to say, how wide is this other arm? The other arm is that wide. So, what I want to do to connect these is I want to make a couple of, we're just going to make circles, going back into circles, right? Kirby style. But, we want to be very careful not to make them wider than this. Unless you're doing forced perspective, which is a whole different video. But so if we can get the width of this onto this, no matter how short it is, then it will look right. Okay, so that's my point about that. I'm going to leave the rest of this. That of course doesn't look right, but you get the idea about the width.